Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with signs of what can happen as public health restrictions are eased and people get too relaxed. Because of some big crowds out in parks on the weekend and because case numbers are not dropping fast enough, Ontario is now delaying plans to allow gatherings of more than 5 people. These scenes caused a lot of unease among public health experts. Thousands of people went to this popular Toronto park, and not everyone stayed in their bubble and followed physical distancing rules.
I'm disappointed, to say the least. These are smart, young people that were there. Like, come on, guys, give me a break. My recommendation, anyone at Trinity Bellwood, why don't you do us all a favor and go get tested now?
There are new rules in Ontario about who can get a COVID-19 test. The Premier says anyone who thinks they need one can now get one, even if they have no symptoms. Ontario is still falling short of meeting its target of 16,000 tests per day. Yesterday, for example, just over 8,000 people were tested. Next door in Quebec, testing has ramped up. The Premier says it surpassed its goal of 15,000 tests a day on Friday. Quebec is still recording the highest daily number of new cases. There were 573 new infections there today. Manitoba was one of several provinces that reported no new cases today. But in Ontario, the number of new cases was above 400 for the 5th day in a row. In total, more than 25,000 people in Ontario have tested positive. Nearly 65% of those cases are in the Greater Toronto area. Jeff Semple reports on what officials there are doing to try and get the situation under control.
On Toronto's hottest day of the year, one of the city's most popular parks was mostly empty. A much different picture from the weekend, when thousands packed the park, sparking a national outcry.
It was like a rock concert without the band.
Ontario health officials urged anyone who was there Saturday to monitor for symptoms and avoid at-risk groups, such as seniors, for 14 days.
My recommendation, anyone at Trinity Bellwood, why don't you do us all a favor and go get tested now?
The Premier wouldn't clarify whether his advice extends to Toronto's mayor. John Tory was among those photographed at the park, his mask under his chin.
I'm a human being. I can tell you the tongue lashing I got from my daughter, who is a doctor who looks after COVID patients, was like very few that I've experienced in my whole life.
The city is now considering new measures, such as these large rings adopted by some American cities to encourage physical distancing in parks.
But frontline physicians say what's more concerning than a busy park is the big picture. For the 5th straight day, Ontario reported more than 400 new cases. And while some provinces have flattened their curves, Quebec continues to climb, and Ontario has seen its caseload bounce back.
When you look at a curve like what's happening in BC or Alberta, that is our goal to get there, and it's been really tough.
Dr. Chakrabarti notes that hospitalizations in Ontario are down, and the transmission is largely in the Toronto area. But the province still isn't tracking exactly where and how.
If we had better granular data and we had data to tell us who's getting infected, where they're getting infected, who they're in contact with, we'd have a much better public health approach.
Ontario is looking to step up its surveillance by expanding testing to those without symptoms but who've had contact with a confirmed case. Like this patient. He says he's feeling fine, but his roommate just tested positive.
So I wanted to make sure, obviously, because you don't want to go back into work with those situations, right? So
Ontario officials are hoping others follow suit. As a result of the recent rise in cases, they're maintaining restrictions on large gatherings longer than they'd planned.
We'll have to wait to see the numbers come down first.
And we should know in a week or two whether the events of the weekend contributed to the caseload. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
It's a long weekend in the U.S., and in some places that means big-time party time. Lots of people appeared to take a vacation from social distancing rules and didn't bother wearing protective masks. How the pandemic is playing out varies widely from state to state, but the U.S. is nearing the grim milestone of 100,000 deaths from COVID-19. President Donald Trump was out on the golf course this weekend. He didn't wear a mask either. As Jennifer Johnson reports, the lax attitudes could lead to a surge in cases.
Across the U.S., shocking images of crowded beaches, boardwalks, and pool parties. Millions of Americans celebrating this holiday weekend shoulder to shoulder, ignoring social distancing signs in clear sight, like here in Missouri. Eye-opening scenes as the country's COVID-19 death toll nears 100,000.
I believe God's got me. I try to kind of stay away from as many people as I can, but not today.
Long lines, no masks, and little concern at this Texas water park.
Everybody's gonna get sick one day. I mean, everybody, it's life. I mean, you could die outside in a car wreck.
Health experts and other Americans feared this attitude will lead to a new surge in COVID-19 cases.
This beach is full of selfish people who don't care about anybody else. Nobody's wearing masks.
U.S. President Donald Trump has encouraged Americans to get out and spend money as America's economy continues its free fall. He left the White House on this somber holiday to visit Baltimore's Fort McHenry, a War of 1812 stronghold that inspired the Star-Spangled Banner.
Together, we will vanquish the virus, and America will rise from this crisis to new and even greater heights.
The visit coming 3 days after the White House Coronavirus Task Force named Baltimore one of 3 U.S. cities with the highest rate of new infections.
It's an election year, and he's trying to get as much attention as he can.
Maryland's Republican Governor Larry Hogan didn't join the president. Baltimore's mayor repeatedly asked Trump not to come, set an example for a city still under a stay-at-home order. But the president, like so many Americans, couldn't stay home. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
The new series that goes inside the COVID-19 pandemic, from the front lines to the everyday heroes helping us cope with the unprecedented change. Coronavirus, the new reality. A Global News special, Sundays at 7 on Global.